Wow, you on Zoom should, oh, can you see the sanctuary with everyone here? It's wonderful. It's wonderful, everyone but all of you. And we hold you with us. Thank you for showing up. And thank you all for coming. And I even see a neighbor here. Oh. So as we begin, I will ring our peace bowl. With this sound, we acknowledge that these lands that we love are the ancestral lands of the Yavapai people, the Wipukepas, the Quevkepayas, the Tolkepayas, and the Yavapai. And as we acknowledge our collective hope for peace, let us travel to islands across the Pacific Ocean. And as we reach those islands, we will cross over a backbone of mountains and arrive on the West Coast, the coast that faces a cold sea that separates it from North Korea and Russia. In that place, battered by the wind, rain, and snow, are places of refuge. The Zen temple near our home was one of those places. At dawn, bells sounded, the meditation halls filled with priests, and afterwards they each found their own duties. Some priests disappeared to the garden to tend the moss. It is morning at Daijoji.
And I've decided to leave this door open because the cicadas help us feel like we're in Japan.
That was perfect. Oh, I feel transported already, don't you? Good morning and welcome to Granite Peak Unitarian Universalist Congregation in beautiful Prescott, Arizona. I'm Tracy Augustine, your worship associate today, and it's wonderful to be here with all of you. We are glad you are able to join us here in person or those on Zoom. I see a lot of people on Zoom today. Welcome. We've had some great participation in our Sunday services this summer, which is wonderful to see, and we hope that will continue as we move into the fall. We also hope you remain in good health. Now, please take a moment to put your phones on worship mode. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. Please join us after the service for coffee and conversation in Davis Hall, or for those on Zoom, you'll be able to join the breakout rooms so you can chat with other Zoomers. If you are joining us here for the first time, please check our website at prescottuu.org for more information about GPUUC. And if you are here in person, there'll be time to introduce yourself at the end of the service, and then we'd love for you to stay and to meet some of the members. We thank our pianist, Lena Hubin, our choir director, who is also our musical guest today, Mary Lou Prince, Deirdre Schwartz in the back, who is running the media and sound, and of course, all our other Sunday morning volunteers. For our announcements, you can read them in the order of service. For visitors, there were some printed copies in the front, and get updates and announcements in the weekly Peak newsletter and on the website and in Reverend Patty's videos. We have many things going on outside of this service, including our faith development classes for adults and the children's faith development program, now led by Sandra and Robert, who are meeting in the faith development building across the street. I do have a couple of announcements to highlight. We have an in-person gathering coming up for our Quad City congregation. This one is on August 28th, next Sunday at 3 p.m. for those from Prescott Valley and Dewey. It's at the Bronco Park at Granville in Prescott Valley. The Prescott Peace Builders would like to invite you to the first of their events to celebrate the UN International Day of Peace. This is part of the Movies with Meaning series, and this one is called Disturbing the Peace. It's on September 6th at 5 p.m. about Israeli soldiers and Palestinian fighters. Lastly, one of our volunteers couldn't be here today, so we need a couple of volunteers to help with the coffee cleanup after coffee. If anybody might do that, if somebody wants to raise their hand now, we'll keep an eye out. Otherwise, last person here drinking coffee gets to help with cleanup. That could backfire. We could have people running out the door pretty quickly. All right. We begin our service in the Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Bobby Bollinger. Today we light the chalice with these words from Rumi. You are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop.
I just want to give you a note that Disturbing the Peace is about Israeli soldiers and Palestinian fighters who changed their ways and began to work for peace. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Oh, I love to hear that sound. For 2.5 years, it's been silence. Yesterday, Mary Lou and I watched a newborn fawn nestle into its mother right below our house. and we watch the rain, which doesn't happen everywhere all at the same time. But how many of you experienced rain? Almost everyone. Hallelujah, I say to that rain. In the 18th century, in the farming village of Mato, which was about 30 minutes from us, a woman, a poet named Fukuda Chioni, wakes up to go to the well for water. But when she arrives, she finds that overnight, morning glories have grown up over her bucket. If she moves the bucket, those morning glories will die. She stands back and writes this poem. Asangao ni tsurube torarete morai mizu. The morning glory took the well bucket away from me. I go to the neighbor for water. For that woman, born into a culture that would have her think about that option, that would have her leave the morning glories undisturbed and go to a neighbor for water, let us sing together, Sakura, Sakura. I will sing the first verse in Japanese, so you don't have to do that one. And then we will sing together the translation. Oh yes, let's rise in body or spirit. So I'm going to sing the Japanese part. Unless you know Japanese, then sing with me. Sakura, Sakura, yayoi no sora wa miwatasu kagiri kasumi kakumo ka nioi zo izuru izaya izaya mini yukan. Cherry blooms, cherry blooms are everywhere, like a cloud from out the sky. Mists of blossoms fill the air. Cherries, cherries blossoming. Come and see, come and see. See and sing. Cherry blooms, cherry blooms, all the world their beauty sees. Yoshino is cherry land. Bells for maple trees, Karasaki for the pine. Let us go, let us go, where pine trees greenly shine. And now let us say together the covenant of our congregation. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is sacrament. and service is its prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. And now you may be seated. And now, once again, let us listen to the sound of our peaceful, and this time let us consider the joys and sorrows that we have brought with us to this space and to your different squares in Zoom. Each time we gather, we bring with us the sorrows of the world, the joys of our lives and the world, and the sorrows of our personal lives. Especially today, we remember Marge Groman, who passed away this week. She was beloved of her women's group and beloved of many in this congregation. We also hold Ken Briefer, who is in hospice, and we hold Dan Reardon, who is here with us. We hold him in the grief of his wife's passing. We hold Susan Cooper, who was able to hold her new grandchild this summer. And all of us, including me last week, who've seen people we've been separated from during this whole pandemic and held them in our arms. And now I invite all of you who have joys and sorrows, names of people you would like us to hold in this community, to say those names into this space, or if you're on Zoom, to share them with us in the chat. I couldn't hear that one. Angel, thank you, Angel. Brad Newman, who had a stroke in June. It's a little hard, who had a massive stroke in June. Thank you. Maybe what, and I think the numbers are down. So those of you who are welcome to breathe a little easier. I know for some of us, we have limitations on the number of minutes we can be enclosed. And when you say a name, please remove your, because it's almost impossible. And from here, from our people who are meeting us on Zoom, we have Billy Joe from Edie, and Deb Walter gives us the name Clyde. Any others in this space? Stephen. And I would hold Peter Eldridge, who lost his beloved mother, who was 103. Daryl.
Yeah, Daryl Levi. I just wanted to share a joy. My 59-year-old son Mark climbed Mount Whitney this last week.
Woo!
I tell you that.
Daryl Levi's 59-year-old son climbed Mount Whitney this week, for those of you on Zoom. So lots of joy for getting up and coming back. And now we have begun to do the tradition that we have at Prescott UU Fellowship. I invite any of you to come up and take a stone. There are bowls on each side, and drop them into the bowl that has water. We believe that these ripples of the water, we hope that they will carry your joys, concerns, or sorrow with them into our congregation and the greater community so that we may be with you in these times. Let us enter into that time of shared silence together, and I invite you to come up and put in a stone. And I am going to put in a stone for my brother who lost his wife 5 years ago and now is just returning from his honeymoon with someone he loves very much. I put in a stone as well for Karen Hagberg's daughter, Sarah. And as we close, I will put in 2 more stones. One for anyone here who may have a joy, concern, or sorrow and not want to come up and put their stone in this bowl. And a final stone for all those who do not have a community in which they can share these joys and sorrows. And now let us sing together our walking with you. Walking with you is my prayer.
As we prepare to take the offering this morning, let us embrace the feeling of connection and community that we have when we gather here each week. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. We also give back to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. August's recipient is the Hungry Kids Project. Please read about them in your order of service or on the slide behind me if you're here in the sanctuary. To give online, go to prescottuu.org/giving. On the bottom left-hand side, click on the bottom left-hand side, click on Support Granite Peak to contribute. The link is also available right there in the chat. Now, please enjoy this offertory music entitled Bamboo Grove in Summer by Mary Lou Prince. We acknowledge the generosity of spirit expressed through these offerings. What is given in love is received in gratitude.
If you had visited us in Japan, if you had come to our home on the western coast of Japan, and I wish you had, we would have picked you up at Komatsu, the closest airport, about a half an hour south of us by the sea. From there, we would have taken the highway north along the Japan Sea. And on both sides, the farmers planted pine forests to keep the sand from their rice fields. These trees were bent sideways from the wind that traveled across the Japan Sea from Siberia and battered the shore. After a few miles, we would turn inland and drive along a local highway, Hachigosen, that was lined with car dealerships, convenience stores called Sanks and Circle K and Lawson, and the flashing signs of pachinko parlors. At some point, we would take a road up towards the mountains, and then we would take the deep valley turnoff and pass a Buddhist temple. Our friend Kochan Sensei, the priest, might be out in front and wave to us, or he might be so busy practicing his baseball swing. That was always what he had hoped to do, that he wouldn't notice us at all. At this place, the air changed, and the road narrowed and curved through deep valley past a traditional hot springs inn, lotus fields ready to harvest, and up until the Hoshino family workshop, where we would veer to the right and wind higher and higher up the road until we came to a place where the road widened and we could turn back and see the whole of Deep Valley below us. The terraced rice fields like stepping stones into the valley below. In the afternoon, mist often rose from the valley, making us feel that our village, which translated meant lucky field, was sitting above the clouds. We'd park the car at the base of a cliff and climb with difficulty, wishing you hadn't brought such heavy bags with you. We would drag them up the stone stairs that were often inaccessible because of the snow, up to our house, the middle one of 3 old farmhouses. At this season, you would have noticed the rice ripening in the rice fields, readying for harvest. We would catch our breath when we reached the porch and turn around and look out at the carp pond and rice fields below, the forested mountains beyond. And I would tell you that tonight we would walk to the upper village and lay our mats out on a field and watch for falling stars. When we arrived from Los Angeles into Narita Airport in August of that fateful year, we planned to stay for 1 year. We knew 3 words of Japanese: yes, no, and thank you. All around us were billboards and signs covered in Chinese characters and phonetic symbols that one day would make sense, but at that time we had no idea what was what, including when we went shopping, whether something was salt or sugar. A month later, we had settled into a flimsy, ramshackle house built during the post-World War II era, and typhoon season had started up, shaking our home in the wind and pulling our umbrellas inside out. At that point in our lives, we had completed graduate degrees and had some years of work experience. But since the people around us did not speak English or French or Spanish or any of the other languages I had studied, we had no words in common except those 3. Even people who did speak some English didn't have enough for a satisfying conversation with Mary Lou about music, or with me about literature or language. And Japanese was hard. All of that neuroplasticity of our young years was gone. And I remember learning good morning, ohayo gozaimasu, by saying it over and over again, and then forgetting it and saying it over and over again. Because unlike other languages I had studied, I found no anchor or structure to which I could attach what I was learning. Our first years, we studied Japanese with a teacher 3 times a week. Those studies of Japanese grammar opened our eyes to the vastness of what we didn't know about Japanese language and culture, about the complexity of respectful and humble grammatical forms. They were so hard and they were so easy to get wrong. We had to learn at that time in our lives to live with knowing that we were probably offending people or making them laugh because their mouths would freeze sometimes. The Japanese were very polite, so they would laugh inside most of the time, but we could feel it. But through all that, we just had to keep on going, making mistakes and feeling like we understood so little. Our education in the United States had not prepared us for learning Japanese. When we had studied Spanish or German or French, we were already knowledgeable about European history and literature, and that gave us a foundation. With Japanese language, we had no foundation, and our struggles to create one changed us forever. During those 24 years, the center of the map of the world shifted for us to the western coast of an island, a place famous for the fish that swam down from the cold sea in the north, and those who swam up from the south, merging on the sushi counters of Kanazawa. We came to hear the cicadas cry as a song, and over many years, we came to feel that we belonged. That was a human miracle. Another aspect is that we emerged from our flight from Los Angeles as foreigners. And I had lived outside the United States already 10 years of my life. But this was different. We were not Japanese. We were foreign, and we stood out from 100 yards, and we became the center of attention when we left our neighborhood or village where people knew us. I remember one drive we took up the mountain. We had a map, and we got on a very tiny road we shouldn't have been on. And we were tired and went to sleep, and we woke up with a group of farmers around our car looking in at us. But then because we could speak Japanese, that atmosphere changed. But our foreignness also explains why coming to feel that we belonged is emotional for me, and why it felt like such a miracle. The sense of belonging was fleeting. I felt it when we had gatherings in our home with good conversations, when the cherry blossoms that were across the rice fields from us flew over us once in a huge cloud and landed on us and our home. When a badger visited our porch on my birthday, and there were times when everything felt so different, when we felt as foreign as if we had landed on Mars. And yet, something within us called to us. And no matter how foreign we felt, that something pushed us to continue to make relationships and to learn. I explored Japanese literature and history, first in translation and then in Japanese, and I filled endless notebooks with Chinese character practice. To translate, which I did in our last years, I had to learn around 10,000 characters. Mary Lou dove into traditional music, learning the different notations for each instrument, the koto, the shakuhachi, and the shamisen. Through the years, our struggles with the culture gave birth to stories, to art, to music. And through our creative language, we entered into a deep and beautiful relationship with our new country. I wrote theater works that we performed on traditional stages dedicated to the sacred theater called No, N-O-H. We became friends with geishas when Mary Lou was commissioned to write music for them and have daily rehearsals in the geisha district. We became friends with sushi chefs, people who sold fruit and vegetables at the open market, all of the people who worked on our house. But it was our creative gifts that took us both far into Japanese culture, and the relationships that grew out of sharing our gifts strengthened our feelings of belonging and happiness. After 10 years in the city, in that ramshackle house, and then another that was a little better, during which I was constantly railing against the beautiful traditional buildings that were being demolished to make room for progress, we searched for and found a traditional farmhouse in a village of 15 families with the auspicious name of Lucky Field. The village was nestled in the foothills of the Japan Alps, the place I described in my reading. It would not have survived if we had not bought it, found it that summer of the longest rainy season in anyone's memory, and replaced the enormous roof. 100 years before, a small forest of many kinds of wood, from cedar to zelkova to mountain cherry, had been harvested to create that house. Every inch of it was the work of master carpenters, put together without one nail. The beams kept the shape of trees that had bent in the wind. Saving Japanese architecture was my passion during our final 14 years in Japan, living in that village. Life in our farmhouse and vegetable garden, and the relationships that unfolded in the village of Lucky Field made us feel intimately connected with a powerful force for good in the world. In Hebrew, the word for that force is ruach. During our time in that village, we often felt that ruach swirling around us and through us. When we moved into our house and began the work of becoming neighbors to the people in those 15 houses, someone told us, there is a woman who will never speak to you because you are an Ame-chan. Ame-chan is a derogatory word for an American. Comes from World War II. We never knew her identity, but after living there for 3 years, we hosted a New Year's party for all the women, and all of them came. And one autumn, the head of the village came to me and said, we are going to have a Buddhist ceremony for the people who fought in the war. Bring your ancestors. So I brought my grandfathers, one who was a great soldier in World War I, to sit with me in that room, filled with the spirits of the soldiers who had left that village not to return. Neither of us, some women do have marvelous skills in house building, but neither of us did. We had no skills that were useful for renovating the house, except for cleaning, fetching, and carrying. And a man we called Oji-san, or grandfather, who was married to the woman called Oka-san, or mother, came to our rescue. A master carpenter by trade, he kindly came to our house to work on his day off. On Sundays, he helped us remove the patchwork of tin pieces that had been attacked to the side of our house, along with many ancient nests and hives. And we replaced it with cedar siding. Unable to help him, I stood on another ladder next to him to steady the cedar planks and to give him nails. That was mostly my job. He would always take about 10 of them, and then he'd line them up like this in his mouth so that he could access them quickly. That meant whatever directions he gave me were done through the nails. And I would guess holding things up. He only took a break for lunch, for which we prepared a big bottle of ice cold Asahi Ichiban Shibori draft beer to accompany his lunchbox, and then he would take a snooze. But in the midst of one of the days, one of those Sundays, he made a mistake. I can't even remember what it was. He made so few mistakes. But I remember that he looked down and he sighed, but in an irritated sighing way. And almost immediately I said to him, "Saru ki kara ochimasu." Even monkeys fall from trees. And he looked over at me and smiled and then laughed, and his good humor came back. Making a mistake didn't mean that you were bad. Even monkeys who live in trees might fall from one. Over those years, our renovation of that house, which centered on a loft that we made light and airy with skylights and windows in the walls, caught the attention of people in the city. I was asked to be on a governmental committee to preserve architecture. And one year, I was asked to be a special guest on the New Year's Day television program Talk with the Mayor. This would be a great chance, I thought, to spread the idea far and wide of saving architecture. The conversation was pre-recorded in the main room of a traditional farmhouse around an open hearth. The mayor was on one side of the hearth and I was on the other. He was in a rush to get to the airport. There was only time for one take of our 40-minute conversation. And he had a list of questions to ask me about the farmhouse and architecture in general. After the second question, he was also scripted to say to me, "Please relax your legs." We began this conversation seated formally with legs folded underneath me. That was a position I could hold for around 25 minutes. Tops, that is 25 minutes for tea ceremony or funerals, which were also done seated that way. The mayor was a very cordial man, and we had a fun conversation talking about the importance of preserving the traditions through architecture and laughing. And it was so much fun that he skipped over the part that told me to relax my legs. Culturally, I could not shift without his prompting. Our positions were different. 20 minutes into our conversation, my legs had fallen asleep. And at about 25 minutes, I fell over on my side with the cameras rolling. He then looked over at me and said, "Ashi o raku ni shite kudasai." Please relax your legs. There was no time to redo this scene. On New Year's Day, the program was shown all over the city and prefecture. Hundreds of thousands of people saw me fall over. Our neighbors came over, as was the tradition on New Year's, and said, "Akemashite omedetou gozaimasu." Congratulations on the opening, or really, Happy New Year. And then they would dissolve into laughter, remembering watching me fall over. A big lesson that we learned over and over again was not to take ourselves too seriously. The more we learned and jumped in and participated, the greater possibility for such situations. When in doubt, laugh. make chances for laughter. The Japanese also taught us how to be neighbors. Sometimes we had to have difficult conversations, like when one neighbor burned plastic garbage and the smoke went in through our windows on the very rare sunny day. But when we apologized for disturbing that relationship with them and brought over a case of Asahi beer, people were less likely to hold grudges. Theirs disappeared. Our neighbors in that village knew how to live together for the long haul. Through the years, they learned how to live with us, and we learned how to live with them. Our connections with neighbors gave us respite from being foreign. We were simply neighbors. Although one woman told us that she could only this is after 10 years, she could only extinguish us from one another if she saw us together. Otherwise, if she saw us one at a time, she had no idea which one it was. And by the time we left, no one had expected that we would leave. The villagers were certain that our graves would be next to theirs. But we had come to believe that there was another chapter waiting in the country our ancestors had chosen. Our long encounter with a culture very different from our own sent us on an amazing study and became the good medicine that we needed for our lives. Japan taught me that wherever we are, the elements for creating a sense of belonging are found in the natural world and in our neighbors and in other humans around us who may have the words that we need to continue. I believe that belonging is a co-creation and that it is a miracle. May we as a community engage in a practice of neighboring with the humans and natural world around us. May we be co-creators in this work of belonging. And when we make a mistake, let us remember, saru mo ki kara ochimasu. Even monkeys fall from trees. Amen. And may it be so. And now I invite you to rise in body or spirit and let us sing. This is our song. It's number 159 in your hymnals. This is my song with all nations, a song for lands afar and wide. This is my home, the country where I hope. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams May we open ourselves to our inner voices that call us to the courageous work of belonging. May we give that gift to ourselves and to the people around us, neighbors and strangers. May we give ourselves and others room to make mistakes and recover. May we have the perseverance and patience to wait for and then recognize miracles. Amen. And may it be so. Wow, you are welcome after this service to go. Mary Lou will be up here if you want to see the koto more close up, or if you have any questions for her. So now is the time we are going to extinguish our chalice. We do that so that our people on Zoom can go into their breakout rooms and talk with each other. And then we will greet our neighbors. So let us first extinguish our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And now I invite you on Zoom, you can start going into your breakout rooms. But I thought of something that people we knew, and our circle by the time we left was huge. And people assumed that we represented Americans. So people would say things to us like, "It's so wonderful that Americans love foreign languages." So if you, and various things. Anyway, if you visit our village,